you're interested in the origins of DEI in the workplace and how therapy movements dovetail with the civil rights movement. A number of refugee psychiatrists from Nazi Germany were eager to create therapeutic systems, i.e. small group discussions, which could inoculate us from racism, starting in the early 1950s. So if you've ever been in a small group at work, this comes out of the Kurt Lewin model, and it has a very intentional trajectory. And telling the story as a comic was kind of a way of really realizing that like feminist old trope of like the personal is political. So thinking about consciousness raising, and so what I did, and I won a hackathon, a PBS hackathon, where I did an app that accompanied my my comic book. So just to give you a little sense of what that, it was just like, looked at Carl Rogers and counter groups, and also most particularly R.D. Laing, who did the anti-psychiatry movement, and that also fits in with some of my family's personal history here. So this is just Kurt Lewin film stills. Lewin hypothesized that different forms of leadership could influence social structure from authoritarian to democratic. So leadership is important according to Lewin. And that's what they're trying to do in those DEI groups, is try to keep us democratic. I think I missed a slide here. Let me see. Okay, this is actually next. And this is the story of my family. My mom worked at the Metropolitan State Hospital in Norwalk, California in the 1970s, which was one of the most serious, cited for abuses in psychiatric care in that period. She was desperate to get out, and thanks to the anti-psychiatry movement, along with the development of some psychiatric medications that allowed people with serious mental illness to live more freely, people started moving into community care. And my mom was able to work with those people. And this is just a short motion media that also accompanied the book, which was, we lived in a community with halfway houses, and there's a guy who walked up and down our block every day for 10 years. And he had a very strange gait. And at 10, I was like, Mom, what's going on with that guy? And she was like, oh, that's the Thorazine shuffle, which is a phrase that people in the psychiatric field use for the medication with Thorazine. And I had a very whimsical interpretation of that. I saw it as kind of a dance. And so I try to tell that story of that movement along with my, youthful interpretation of it. So. This is a little mini book that I did called I Am Not a Dog, about living with my dad in hospice. And my dog was dying at the same time my dad was dying, and we had a lot of conversations about what to do with the dog. And my dad, who was very firm in his own agency about his own death, said this phrase a lot: I am not a dog. You can't make you can't make the same decisions about me that you're making about the dog. Which was, by the way, that we wanted to keep the dog alive. Anyways, this is him. He loved flowers, but he was very sad. And this is him being funny. So then this is my final and current book project. This is Alice Salomon School of Social Work, a selection from the Haida Gobin book project, working title. And this is the shots from an album from Alice Salomon School of Social Work, which was the first school of social work in Europe in the 1920s. And these are sort of reworkings of real historical images of Alice Salomon hanging out in her school with these very intellectual discussions that they're having about the role of women in care work for women as public professionals. So I'm going to read you the description of the book itself because it's complicated, and I often kind of am like, how do I describe this? The book is the story of Haida Gobin, who was a German woman who is documented as both a collaborator and resistor during the Nazi regime. Gobin attended Alice and Salomon's Progressive School of Social Work in the 1920s, lobbied to let women join the police as reformers, and joined the police in a cadre of 6 gender non-conforming women in 1927, became a member of the Kripo, the criminal police, as the Nazis rose to power, was the lover of a war criminal, compatriot of the Bonhoeffer group, who were the people who planned the plot to kill Hitler, was peripherally involved in the plot to kill Hitler, and the whole book is really about the compromised character of social work and of social care. And Heidegger Bean is my namesake, and she was my grandfather's cousin. That's it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kara Bean, and welcome to Boston. Both of my parents were born in Boston, and I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm just kind of thrilled to have this room of cartoonists in here. I'm happy to be here with you. My work is, if you can't tell by my energy, I'm a teacher. I work as a high school art teacher for many years, and I've also been doing comics for about 15 years. And my work in graphic medicine came out of my work in education. So even though I was the art teacher, mental health came up very often in the classroom. And so I made I actually attended some workshops about depression and suicide ideation. And I'm an obsessive doodler. I'm just always drawing when I'm trying to pay attention. And so I ended up taking notes in these workshops, and because I'm a cartoonist, my notes are all comics, and it ended up being really useful to people. So out of that, I call it the project that wouldn't go away, but people kept asking if they could use my notes or borrow the pictures and so on and so on, and I eventually surrendered to the concept of making, the first thing I made called Snake Pit spoke to adults that work with kids. And then I was sort of challenged with, could you create something that spoke directly to kids about mental health? And then I did Let's Talk About It with the Center for Cartoon Studies in Vermont. And I worked on that while I was working on this larger book called Here I Am Me, an illustrated guide to mental health. And that's like a 288-page visual, it's a comic, it's all comics, but it's, what do we call it? Illustrated guide. So funny about language. But yeah, just if you haven't seen or heard of it, these are the chapters that are inside the book. It's just a kind of overall primer, but it really does look inside of neuroscience and the brain, as well as a bit about therapy and symptoms and substance use. And it was a lot of collaboration with many brilliant people. I'm going to do a quick little reading from the chapter about stigma. So here we go. The origin of the word stigma comes from ancient Greece. I declare that this person is bad. Yeah, everybody needs to know how bad this person is. Hold still. A stigma was once a way for someone in power to physically mark an enslaved, oppressed, or otherwise controlled person. This is unfair. What if it's not true? Stigma is now a word in modern society for an invisible mark on a person that makes us think of something negative. Instead of a physical mark, it's an idea. As a cartoonist, I like to draw the idea of stigma as a monster. What a slimeball. Stigma can make it hard for people to share their emotions. You are bad. Stigma happens when a society or group of people form a set of negative or unfair beliefs about a person or group or characteristics associated with them. Bad, bad, bad. Stigma makes a person feel like an outsider. You're not one of us. Because of stigma, a lot of people don't get help for their mental health problems. Stigma shows itself in the words that people use to label a person. Stigma can also come from the inside. It can show itself in the way that you feel about yourself. I must be bad. Sometimes it seems like stigma is everywhere, judging you for all sorts of things. So how do we fight stigma? One way you can fight is by being here and not running away when I bring up mental health. Like, good job. That's just a little taste. And then just also, for any of you that are interested in neuroscience, I found it really fun to make characters out of the different areas of the brain. You got your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala and your hippocampus. Anyway, I love that cartooning is a way you can instantly incorporate character, but also like diagrams, and just leans itself in so many beautiful ways. But I'll stop there.
Hi, everyone. My name's Caroline Hu. Thank you for having me today. I am a biology professor. I'm also a cartoonist. I teach biology primarily to art and design students right here in Boston at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. It's a lot of fun. My cartooning practice is mostly focused on science communication. My first graphic novel is coming out this fall. It's a middle grade biography of Jacques Cousteau with Penguin Workshop. And so, thanks, thank you. And so while science communication, I would say, is primarily the focus of my comics, I would really credit graphic medicine for pulling me back into comics, because I was deep into postdoctoral research. And my mom received a terminal cancer diagnosis. And it was this big collision of science, health, and emotion. And I would say I had taken a break from I was still drawing, but I kind of taken a break from finishing anything. And so a graphic medicine piece was my first comic after many years. And now at Mass Art, I do bring together science and comics and teach a class both on science communication and comics, as well as a graphic medicine class. I want to show you now the first comic I made in a long time, which was also after I'd read Brian Fee's Mom's Cancer, and I also was like, this is possible? So my comic was called Our Unknown Path, and I kind of visualized the Yawkey building of Mass General in like a Mobius desert planet. And I really brought in science fiction because, well, I guess being the biologist child, I could read about these up-and-coming therapies like precision medicine, CAR T-cell therapy, and unfortunately I knew that these would not be available in time. So for me, science fiction just was a way to bring it out of myself but not have to actually glare right into that hot grief sun. So here's me with sort of, with my mother character, and getting that sort of precision analysis, and then visualizing, actually receiving something like CAR T therapy. Now in teaching, I want to lighten the mood a little bit. I do invite in students and I tell them, bring yourself, your true self, to your work, because I believe science communication, health communication should be as diverse as its audience is. And I want to show you an example of a comic that was created by a student and also an anatomy professor. So I have one class where every student gets paired with a scientist, and they make work about that scientist's research. And this student, I was like, yeah, bring yourself into this. So he's a skateboarder, and the professor he was working with is an anatomy professor, particularly interested in tissue engineering, creating new tendons for people who, say, have had an injury. And she was like, listen, us tissue engineers, we have a bad reputation. People think we're creepy. We're like Frankensteins. And why don't we instead try to show how we work with the living, and we can help you return to a better state of health. So this is what they created. I'm going to do a quick reading as well. So first, cool guy skateboarding. tries to do a sick trick. Oh no. I said, ow, I think I tore something. Oh, and then this building behind him, it now doesn't look so good either. But now it's kind of come the next part where hopefully you'll never forget this comic again. Because his skateboard then comes to life and says, Dante, no sweat, help is on the way. And look at the amazing legs on this thing. Tissue engineering could aid in your recovery. And he says, but Sergio, aren't tissue engineers creepy and weird? Not at all. And Sergio goes on to explain, anatomists and tissue engineers, which, of course always look like this, work together to help the living and restore injuries. We get to see some of the cells that we're hoping to grow. And then Sergio also walks through the step-by-step procedure where we take cells, and then we actually provide cells with a scaffold on which they can start to grow and actually build some 3D structure. Because ultimately, what we want to return to somebody is a 3D structure. And now these tissues are ready to implant after this process. And then Sergio points out, you see, Dante, it's a lot like this building behind you. It also needed some engineering and support to get repaired. And Dante says, wow, look at all that scaffolding. So ultimately, Dante does receive this implant, and Sergio signs off saying, now everyone can get back to doing all the physical activities they love. Time to ride. And now that sick trick is landed. And yeah, so this is something I think that is, of course, educational for the student, because I don't think they knew this much about tissue engineering, but also to show how they have learned. This whole scaffold metaphor, it came from the student who I think up until at that point didn't actually know how tissue engineering works. And I would say both student and professor were quite happy with this outcome, and seems like it also made a few of you smile, so thank you very much.
Hi. So I am Sofia Kornienko, and I go by just Nienko in my artistic work. I'm an animation artist and visual journalist based in Boston, and I'm trying to tell real stories with animation and comics. I've got many years of traditional broadcast journalism behind my back, and now my current focus is a comics journalism project that is called Free to Browse, which is about transgender teens growing up online and the internet as a lifeline. It's basically challenging the idea of age gating and censorship on the internet. The first chapter of this project is already available on my website at nienko.com, and I'll be showing you just like a quick read of some panels from the first chapter and a few pages from several other chapters. The project is basically a set of interviews and first-person accounts by teens, and the first chapter is about my son. Are you feeling embarrassed that your breasts are starting to show? Should we go pick out a nice bra together? And this is the face that my son usually would give me when he was still closeted, when I would be saying something stupid. Everest, which is not his real name, but the way he wanted to be called in the book, Everest really enjoyed walking around the house with no shirt on. I guess it made him feel boyish. Honestly, it's a sensory thing. I just feel more comfortable not wearing clothes. I'm still really proud of myself for hiding the bikini that you bought me. No one could find it behind the bookshelf for 2 years. After puberty hit, I could only experience that comfort alone in my room. when no one else was around. Even then, I would cover my chest with my shirt. I can't wait to be able to just freely not wear shirts again after I have top surgery. Call us, because duct tape isn't a long-term solution. Please don't actually bind with duct tape. Although now I do worry it may become more difficult to get top surgery. Everest childhood in Europe, wearing sandals in the snow to prove a point to me. If I weren't online, none of my life would have happened. None of it. Long before Everest knew he was trans, he had a strong sense that something about how everyone perceived him was way off. He developed a philosophy, not to let other people tell him how he should and shouldn't live his life. Freezing my feet in the snow was less bad than saying yes to someone. It was his way of staying true to his core self, of preserving who he really was. How did you guys like it up on the Eiffel Tower? Was it really cold? It wasn't even painful. I actually had a good time doing it. It felt extremely liberating. Look at that. She got herself nice boots and couldn't even be bothered to get a pair of shoes for her kid. I did empathize with you, Mom, but the desire to do this was stronger than empathy. I thought about it in a more mature way than you did, even though I was 6. I thought, Mom will get over it, and you did. And this is from a chapter about a different kid that I interviewed. I first ignored puberty until I couldn't. Then my old best friend, Stephanie, I can't really see, gave me her sister's old chest binder. We struggled to get it on, which gave us a good laugh. This person asked me to draw them with a mask on, a mask that came from a very popular Japanese comic that they were a fan of. Sorry, it's very small. I can't read this, but maybe I can read it that way. But basically, oh, great, thank you. We ended up cutting down through the back, and I sewed some extra fabric onto it. I actually wore it to a wedding, and surprisingly, everyone thought it was a bra, including my mother, who later let me buy a new one because the stitching broke. And this is from yet another teens chapter, who was telling me how they were feeling uncomfortable in all-female spaces. My parents convinced me that it was a normal part of childhood to dream of being a boy. I brought it up to them when I was about 6. Yes, it's normal. It'll go away when you get older. So I kept waiting, and it never did. So I kept thinking, oh, they must mean older. So I just keep waiting. Well, I don't have breasts like the rest of the girls in my family. So as long as I cut my hair and wear pants all the time, people will think I'm a boy. Well, there goes that plan. Thank you.
Hi, I'm gonna temper the mood a little bit. I'm Sylvie Lardeux. I'm a scientist. I lead a team of data scientists in healthcare for my day job, and I draw comic when I have time. I have been really interested in the healthcare in different aspects, both around chronic disease, the experience of chronic diseases, as well as mental health and the experience of health. Like I said, I work in the healthcare industry. The healthcare in America is very complicated to be in. It's very isolating when you have a condition that is chronic or is complicated. So I believe that comics can really help people that are affected to feel less alone and to help them advocate for themselves too. And that's really why I think it's a great way to help, either on the form of memoir or journalism, like the lived experience can help others that are something similar or different but feel less isolated. So this is a memoir part about that happened a long time ago, and is not extremely joyous, but I will do a quick read of it. So I was finishing veterinary school, and I decided to stop smoking by taking Chantix, and that did not work very well for me. It made me stop eating totally and develop anorexia. And I still continue smoking, by the way. So I developed the classical side of anorexia, with like a difficulty with body and difficulty eating anything and counting calories. I think at the time in my life there was a lot going on that probably were confounding factors, and I think that's important. It's probably not one thing. And really went really deep in kind of that anorexia phase for a couple of years, including some self-harm. And I think that something that was really hard for me to talk about, and I actually drew this comic to talk to my therapist about it. Eventually, when you don't eat, you can't think. And that's really very straightforward. Your brain gets foggy, you can't really think, you can't do anything. And I needed my brain. That was the only thing that mattered to me. That was the only thing that mattered in my family. And like literally, my grandfather stopped eating when he thought his brain was not good enough and decided to prefer to die than not work. So I decided that I needed to do something to avoid the same fate. So I had a plan. I created a plan. In France, we have this talk called class préparatoire. I won't go into it, but it's a painful time in your life where you work like crazy to try to go to a good school, and I loved it. It was fantastic. So I decided I needed to recreate that event to be able to save my brain. So I decided to go do a PhD. That was the best idea I ever had, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna need to work a lot, I'm gonna need to think a lot, I'm gonna need to eat. So I ate, and eventually I was able to kind of overcome the sickness. And of course, this type of problematic, whether it's disordered eating or other mental health issue, they don't come out of nowhere. So there's always other things to the background to deal with, but that's what therapy is for. So thank you very much.
Oh. I'm going to ask you all questions, so I'll just stand here as soon as I get back to the slide I want. All right, so thanks everyone for sharing some of your work. I wanted to, since you're all coming from different spaces and backgrounds, right? But you're all creating comics that have health-related topics. So I'm curious about what the research process that goes into creating this graphic medicine work is like for each of you. Is it any different than other comics you've done? Like, where do you start? What are the stumbling blocks with that? Anyone can jump in.
Okay, Hello, okay, it's working. So, yeah, I think for me, the work I was doing was very much research-based, so I had to do a lot of homework, which I was not a good student as a young person. So I was like, man, look, my whole life is just doing homework now. So it was a lot of, just a lot of sorting through things. And then ideally, my goal was to make it approachable for like a middle schooler. So how much information is enough information and what's the right information? And the way I was able to enter this field and not feel completely defeated was the graphic medicine community. Number one, I had started attending their conferences after I had made that little zine, and I was like, oh, I'm getting pulled into this. I met lovely psychologists and scientists and other educators and academics who were encouraging. And then when I started making my work, I had a base of people to send out chapters to and have them give me feedback. And I think for me, because I'm not an expert and I'm not a mental health professional, I'm just like a human that was like, I think this would be a good thing, and will you help me make it? It was so important to collaborate with others and get those notes. So it was a very long, tedious process in a way, just the writing of it. As a cartoonist, I love to draw, and that part didn't freak me out. Like, I'm happy to redraw things and try different metaphors, and that was fun. But for me, it was just getting the content correct. Like, that, for me, that was a piece that was maybe different from making like just a story about my life or my cat or whatever.
Is this on? Maybe I can be the alternate there, which is I started as an academic, and there's this point when my whole academic career was kind of imploding, and I realized that a successful academic article, the readership was considered like a successful peer-reviewed article. They expected maybe 20 or 30 people to read it, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I knew that I was writing about social psychology and about obscure media stuff, but I actually thought it had relevance. It had relevance to the life that my mom had led. It had relevance that people could read that was more about regular lives. So I started as an artist before I went to grad school, and I was just like, I'm just going to draw stuff, and I love research. I love looking up weird stuff, and so that part was really, really fun for me.
Any other?
I'll chime in. So when it comes to research, I still have journal access through my prior employer. So I read, the literature. But also, often when, say, federal government in a different previous attitude towards science funds research, they will often require that the research be publicly available. So I also, because I know that, there have been times where right now I'm working on a story about human development, and I was like, well, there must be some sort of atlas online of the human embryo. And sure enough, there's a whole 3D atlas of the human embryo that I was able to find. So I think having some of that prior knowledge does help me do my research a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And I also, once I find these things though, I also just tell all my students about it. It's like, look, it's here. The references are right here.
I don't have any problems with research either, because being a journalist and everything. What I do find different is that I really have to make sure I don't re-traumatize anyone, and that it's somehow beneficial, benevolent, in a way, opening some new perspectives to look at those pictures. Like, for example, I had an instance when I wanted to really convey to people who don't know what being trans is and how that feels, to show what the first period feels like according to my son and according to the other teens that I've talked to. And I drew this teen whose chapter it was with crying black tears, and both my son and the person whom I was drawing, they were like, this really freaks me out, and I don't want to see this. So you have to constantly communicate whether this would be a relevant visualization of what they're experiencing.
Yeah, for me, is that working? Yeah? Oh, okay. For me, the research is not an issue either, and I love making complicated problems more simple. So that's great. That's a fun part. But it's how to bring the emotional component within it, and bringing that, to bring the reader's empathy where you want it, that I think is the most interesting part and can be difficult, how you transform something linear and boring. Being sick is boring. It is. But create a story out of that where others can relate.
Being sick is boring it can get monotonous, right? Like it's just the same all the time. Speaking from experience. I guess because some of your work is very personal, and I guess I'm curious, we talk in the graphic medicine community a lot about this idea of getting it out there, being cathartic and helpful to put it out on paper and share with others. But then we've also over the years seen a bit of a backlash to that idea, right? Like you mentioned possible re-traumatization. Have you all had experience with this? Like, what has this process of getting it out been like for you all? Is it helpful to share? Are you sometimes hesitant to share? Don't overshare here if you don't feel like answering, but that's where this question is going.
Yeah, I can take this one. For me, it has been very helpful and very difficult in the same time, but very helpful. It really helped solve something, because I think the combination of drawing and telling the story is much more powerful than just telling the story. Because the visualization helps, at least for me, helped solve a lot of things. So now sharing is vulnerable and that's difficult, but it's also a positive challenge for me.
I can go next. So I was thinking about this question and about, it is a tricky thing. Like it's funny, since my book has come out, some people have invited me to work with young people, teens, and have them tell their stories. And I'm very protective of them because I feel like it's something you have to choose to do and feel comfortable doing, and you shouldn't have to do it if you don't want to do it. And there are definitely benefits to doing it, but in what context and what kind of support do you have? So for me, I do share some personal stories in my book, but I do it in the way that I would as an educator, where I'm very conscious of how much I'm telling you. And like, I certainly haven't written my memoir that goes into my darkest, deepest, maybe someday I will, but that hasn't happened in this book. But I would say maybe the chapter that was maybe the most challenging for me to write was substance use and addiction, because there's a lot of that in my family, and I do talk a little bit more about that. And because, you know, my parents' generation did not talk about it at all, it felt very like, wow, I can't believe I'm writing this down, and like making sure people are okay with that and kind of like testing the water. But I was really happy that, yeah, like the people that are alive today in my family were like, do it, it's great, you know, we support you. But I did have a few people read it before I knew I was going to publish it.
I can say that it's really hard to tell if this is on or not. I can say that I do tell stories that often include some uncomfortable truths, and that can be, and it is really challenging to figure out the balance there of truths that you feel like you have ownership over versus the ones that you have ownership over, but other people have ownership over also. And so, like for instance, with the Heido Gobin story, everybody from her generation is dead, but her grandniece is alive. There's a question like that side of my family was Jewish, but was not open about it during World War II. People have asked me to not talk about that. I'm probably not going to do that. So, but there are definitely, you know, issues that come up, and sometimes there are times when people ask you not to tell truths that are your truths, and because they overlap with their truths, and that is a really complicated, like, moral choice that one has to like make on a case-to-case basis, and it's not easy.
I was definitely compelled to make the comic I showed in my slides because I wanted to make my own meaning of what was happening to me. And oh, if I see any of you out there is making a comment about grief, I want it. And I think, people might ask, why do you want to read like such sad stuff? And I really think it's because, I'm exploring your sadness, I'm sharing my sadness, but by doing this, like, I feel a little bit less alone. And that is really why I want it.
To me, it's a way to take myself less seriously. And the more I draw, the less seriously I take myself. And I'm also trying to, I guess, anonymize most of the people that I'm writing about or drawing. And I think it gives like a totally new language. I actually pivoted to more visual journalism because I got completely entangled in the several languages that I used for my work. And I just wanted to find like another language to talk about things, which also allows, instead of specific words, maybe creating distance between the serious issue and your perception of it in like a completely new way.
I have so many follow-up questions, but no time. So in order for us to get wrapped up, I would just ask, can each of you share something upcoming you're excited about? Comics, graphic medicine-wise, anything coming up that you want people to know about that you haven't already pitched? Yeah, if you want to, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just working on my book. I will say that's what I'm doing. I'm working on the Heidegger Bean project, which also a working title of a nice old German name.
I just read a book I loved. It was called Your Brain on Art, and it's like very supportive of how the arts can affect us in a positive way and could be actually healing. And I'm super interested, especially with this group, like how you feel about drawing, what it does for your brain, for your mind. When does it get dark? When does it like lift your mood? And like how does it shift with you as you age? And how has it been your companion? Like, so if you want to chit chat with me about drawing, like that's what I'm really interested right now in.
Matt, I think we should talk about the New England Graphic Medicine Summit. All right, so hello. If you are based in New England this fall at the Longwood Medical Campus here in Boston, we will be having a summit all about graphic medicine. We are inviting cartoonists, scholars, students, of course, medical care professionals as well, to just congregate together. We're going to just nerd out about graphic medicine and also offer some workshops. You can follow bit.ly/NEGM25. And also, I'll be sticking around the rest of today if you want to talk about it with me.
Yeah, or just ask us, because the bit.lys get weird.
Sorry.
Just go to Caroline's Instagram. She posts everything. Well, I'm excited that I'm going back to school. I think I'll be like the oldest student. And I'm going to do Masters of Fine Art in Visual Narrative at Boston University College of Fine Arts. And I hope that this project will be my thesis that I was just pitching, or not pitching, but talking about.
I realized I should somehow pitch the Mass Art Continuing Ed certificate program that is,
Yes, I was Haida's student for like 2 years.
and they're awesome.
She's
like,
great.
Yeah, it's an all online program that has had some really amazing people go through it, and it's just actually a really nice community that is building around cartooning, and a lot of like mid-career professional artists who we have a space to make cartoons, and it's a blast. It's just.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your work and your expertise. If you have questions for any of these amazing people, here's where to find them. Snap a photo of the slide. Bother them throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you all so much. That was fantastic. We really, really appreciate it. Audience members, thanks for being here. Live streamers, if you're with us, thank you for being here. We'll be back in 15 minutes for our final session of the day. So thank you very much. All right, I know lots of great conversations are going on in the room, but we are ready for our final presentation of the day. If you'll come take your seats, please. I know we've got some people chit-chatting outside. Fantastic. Well, if your brains aren't totally full and bewildered and excited, I've heard so many nice compliments for the sessions already and the range of artwork and inspiration and effort that goes into creating comics of all different kinds. It's such a cool thing, like, right? This is why we all get together in person or online, because this is a community. Yeah. And even if we don't do the same thing that everyone else is doing in this group, we all get it on some like fundamental level. It's just delightful. So I'm just absolutely thrilled to welcome our final guest of the day. And for those of you joining us online through live stream, thank you for joining us for the final session for today's NCS conference as part of the 79th Annual Reubens Awards. And please help me welcome Barbara Brandon-Croft.
Okay, so I know you can hear me because the mic is right here. Okay. So hello, National Cartoonist Society, and thank you, Boston Public Library. I am very thrilled to be part of the revolutionary art programming. I'm happy to be at the 2025 NCS conference. Oops. Okay. And I appreciate all of you who stayed to listen to me. I appreciate that. A giant thanks to NCS Board President Karen Evans. The two of us have discovered we have much in common, including the fact that we both grew up at the knee of a cartoonist father, and that we continued in their field. We're members of a rather exclusive sorority. In my case, my dad and I created separate comics, decades apart, distributed by two different syndicates, which is pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. I'm grateful for this opportunity to tell my dad's story and to tell my story. It has become my mission in life to keep my dad's legacy alive. Dad passed on in 2014, and he was 87. Oh, I forgot to show Dad. There he is. So, and in today's political culture, where folks are brandishing these giant erasers, trying to eliminate certain sections of history, I'm proud to be the voice in keeping our collective history alive. There he is again. So in the late 60s, my dad, Brumsick Brandon Jr., was among the first of 3 pioneering Black cartoonists featuring Black characters to be syndicated in this nation's mainstream press. Let's be clear, by mainstream, it's just a euphemism for the white press. A little history to put things in perspective. For those too young, I don't know how many are too young out there, because we're cartoonists for a while, but for those too young, the 60s was a turbulent time. The country was facing a rising tide of discontent, Social unrest was widespread. Assassinations were commonplace. City streets were on fire. It was the height of the civil rights movement. White newspapers were struggling to find a way to appease Black readers, at least in appearance, by being give the appearance of being forward-thinking, and all while things remaining status quo. Integrating the funny pages was an easy way to accomplish that, yet still profound. My dad, the Black cartoonist granted entry into the new world of the white press, included my dad. He created a comic strip called Luther, which was a nod to the recently slain civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr., and was distributed by the Los Angeles Times Syndicate. And there was Maury Turner. Oops, I did it twice. Oh no, you know what they have anyway. Maury Turner of We Pals fame, Creator Syndicate, and Ted Shearer, who penned Quincy for King Features. They all created comic strips featuring Black children. Arguably, this is the least threatening way to bring Black characters into white homes. As you probably know, this was around the same time Charles Schulz introduced Franklin to Peanuts. It was 1968. But it was that trio of Black cartoonists that gave the country a wider audience. Its first opportunity to see Black characters drawn by Black hands. Comics have been in newspapers since the late 1800s, and from the start, Black characters were depicted as minstrel memes. You had your coons, your slackers, bug-eyes, big-lipped buffoons. Having Black cartoonists represented in the mainstream papers was radical. Talk about revolutionary art. I am proud to amplify this story. But first, I'll talk about me. It's true. I am the first Black female cartoonist to appear in the country's mainstream press. Mind you, my cartoon feature, Where I'm Coming From, did not feature children. No pickaninnies there. My characters were adults, Black women to be specific. Never before were we seen in the white newspapers in this capacity. Not your mammies, not your Jezebels. My characters were real women talking real talk. However, I am not the first Black woman cartoonist in American papers. That distinction goes to the incredible Jackie Orms, who created Torchy Brown comics, as well as Candy and Patty Joe and Ginger, starting in the 1930s. Her work appeared in the Black press, in papers like the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender. Thank goodness for the Black press. That's where you'll find the very first Black cartoon characters drawn by Black cartoonists. Our skin was not the butt of the joke there. I give all props to Jackie Orms. I am more nearly the female cartoonist version of Jackie Robinson, since I crossed the color line into the white newspapers. So Where I'm Coming From made its debut in the Detroit Free Press in 1989, and I am forever grateful to Marty Claus. She was the managing editor at the time, and she actively set out to find Black cartoonists. She wanted the paper to reflect the readership. Detroit is still one of our chocolate cities. The fact that she selected me is quite an honor, and I am forever in her debt. And that was the great Lee Salem. I can't say enough about Lee. I loved him and miss him deeply. He brought me into the Universal Press Syndicate fold in 1991 and remained my champion well after my syndication ended. Where I'm Coming From was distributed to more than 60 papers, both in this country and internationally, until 2005, which means I had a 14-year run, which is not too shabby, 16 years if you count Detroit Free Press. I like to think of myself as taking the ride into syndication along with the next wave of Black cartoonists that followed my dad's in the late 80s. Ray Billingsley, Curtis, still going strong since 1988. Curtis was not his first syndicated strip. Stephen Bentley, Herb and Jamal, since 1989. Rob Armstrong, Jumpstart, since 1989. Jerry Kraft with Mama's Boys, who has since skyrocketed into the stratosphere with his graphic novels. He's a great guy. And don't let me leave out what happened in 1996, Aaron Magruder. The Boondocks was a juggernaut. And then came along my Bianca Eunice, contributing to Six Chicks, Steens with her Heart of the City, and I'll apologize to all the cartoonists I'm leaving out. We're still a growing but small tribe, but I do know Crabgrass. Congratulations to the cartoonists there. Good gracious. Bacon, Keith Knight. They're all. I'm just really proud to see that these waves continue to happen, to occur. I am, I'm me. So just before the pandemic hit, a very kind Peggy Burns of Drawn and Quarterly reached out to me and said she'd like to put my story along with a collection of my comics in a book. And forgive my ignorance, but I had no idea what Drawn and Quarterly was. She sent me some of their books to edify me. I was blown away. I said, you guys make beautiful books. How are you going to make a beautiful book out of my work? She scoffed. She said, and assured me that they could do it. Indeed, they did. They really did. And she said that my story was an important story and it needed to be documented. I was humbled and thrilled. I still am. In 2023, my book, my backstory, plus essays, including one from a comics scholar who put my work in historical context, was assembled into a hardcover book called Where I'm Coming From. Not only did it appear in several lists of favorite books of that year, shout out to Ms. Magazine, it also received an Outstanding Book Award from, I keep looking at two things, sorry. Outstanding Book Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. And it received an Eisner nomination. Oh, and I got a Inkpot. Inkpot Award. Not long after the book's debut, I was approached by the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and asked to create a cartoon feature for their digital platform, MoMA Designs. I happily obliged, and created a memoir of sorts. Earlier this year, they included my work in their Drawn to MoMA hardcover book, which is a collection of 25 cartoonists. I'm going to use that cartoon to help me tell my story. I called it One Cartoonist Story, a mini memoir. Ever since I was a kid, I was told I could draw. I took it in stride and with pride. That's me on the end in all red, and my bestie Leslie, and my fellow emerging artists in one of our early exhibits. I was never in need of supplies. My dad was an artist. He even built a studio in our basement. Before that, he worked from the dining room table. By the early 70s, my dad was an established, nationally syndicated cartoonist and a local TV personality. I'm going to go off script, off cartoon for a minute to elaborate on my dad. So in 1968, Luther made its first appearance in the Manhattan Tribune. Oh, okay. Luther made his first appearance in the Manhattan Tribune. Then in 1969, a Reporters News Syndicate got Luther into the Washington Post. That was a big thing. Shortly after that, Luther was picked up by the Los Angeles Times Syndicate. So in addition to doing his daily strip, that same year, Dad started what would become a 13-year run as Mr. Beebe, and also Seymour the Bookworm, a puppet he created, on a local children's television show called Time for Joya. In 1971, he illustrated a Sesame Street book called The Six-Button Dragon, written by Matt Robinson. He was the first Gordon. And in 1975, he launched another children's television series called Vegetable Soup with Melba Moore, produced by the New York State Department of Education. And he was already a regular contributor to the journal Freedom Ways, a quarterly review of the freedom movement, which was the seminal political, cultural, and literary journal of its time, known for noting Black intellectuals and artists. I'm talking Dad was among the writings of James Baldwin, Paul Robeson, Langston Hughes, Nikki Giovanni, just to name a few, and visual artists, Jacob Lawrence, Romare Bearden, Tom Feelings, and the cartoonist Oliver Harrington, one of Dad's absolute favorites. Freedom Ways is where you'll see some of Dad's most salient editorial cartoons. A little backstory to the backstory. It was Freedom Ways, his work in Freedom Ways, that got him noticed by Newsday Specials Syndicate. They wanted him to create a black strip for their papers, but they didn't want him to talk about race. How on earth? Anyway, that's how Luther was conceived. Luther's first paper was the Manhattan Tribune, but Newsday, now known as Long Island Newsday, was dragging its feet. They put Luther in Newsday once they saw the reception it received in the Manhattan paper. Oh, and he also turned out 6, count them, 6, Luther books between 1968 and 1976. All that to say, he needed help cranking out his daily strip. So he put me and my brother to the test. He wanted to see which one of us had a steadier hand. Our mission was to draw, essentially trace, one of his characters on a light box. I won. We kept my brother's drawing up on display for a long time. It was hilarious. It was like, what? Drawing isn't his thing. But fishing is another story. Actually, he followed in my mom's steps and went into education, and while I followed in Dad's. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our older sister, Linda. And she did not participate in the drawing contest. She was headed to Brown University. She carved out her own way and went on to become an entertainment lawyer. Anyway, that little test put me on track, unbeknownst to me at the time, to becoming a cartoonist. My job was to apply the zipper tone on his characters, and sometimes ink in silhouettes. And on one occasion, I did the lettering after my dad had back surgery. My handwriting wasn't as good as his yet, but it worked in a crunch. I was paid $5 every other week when 2 weeks of Luther was due. And $5 actually was a good deal back in the early 70s, especially for a 9th grader. So when it came time for college, for me to go to college, I decided I would study art, since it seemed to come easy to me, and I like easy. And because my dad heard Syracuse University had a good art school, I applied there. Another side story on Dad. Dad attended NYU in 1945 as an art education major. He also drew cartoons and covers for Varieties, the New York humor magazine at the time. All that came to an end when Dad sold his first cartoon to a national magazine on his first attempt. Emboldened by his new professional status, he decided he didn't need NYU anymore. Okay, back to me. So SU was the only school I applied to, and to my amazement, I was accepted. Once I got there, I found out studying art was not easy. It was work, and I hate work. Plus, SU was huge, and not only that, everyone was talented. I felt very small. It's me at the bottom. I did my 4 years at the School of Visual and Performing Arts, but I didn't have a focus. I took classes willy-nilly, signed up for classes on a whim, Let's see, swimming, what? Sociology, I took all kinds of stuff. Public speaking, see how well that did for me. Anyway, so after 4 years, I had plenty of credits, but they didn't amount to a degree in anything. And that's me at the bottom saying, shh, my mom might see this. She does know, she doesn't need to be reminded. So home I went, not knowing what my no degree having self was gonna do. Although I'd been trained in cartooning, it was not something I was interested in pursuing. I felt like it was Dad's thing, not mine. In fact, he was still going strong. Luther didn't end until 1986, excuse me. My 4 years at Syracuse ended in 1980. Even after Luther, Dad continued to creating comics for the Black News Consortium, Black Resources, later known as Black Media, and producing editorial cartoons and writing columns for Florida Today, not to mention his painting, his sculpting, his paper mosaics. He was absolutely prolific. So I started thinking about how much I like fashion. So I decided to go down that path. I found a want ad in the Times, and it said, looking for a fashion reporter, trainees considered. I declared myself a trainee, brought along my portfolio, and got the gig as a fashion reporter and illustrator at Retail News Bureau. I thought I was something. I cut my hair, had trendy clothes, but the pay was next to nothing. Hoping to make more money, I managed to get an interview with the editor of an upcoming Black women's magazine called Elan. I was told by her, and by her I'm talking about Marie Brown, who is the renowned literary agent now. I told her I said I'd do anything, and again, I bought my portfolio. After listening to me yammering on for a while, she said, "You're kind of funny and you draw. Do you think you can come up with a cartoon for us?" The very same Barbara, this very same person who said cartooning was not my thing, I gave her a very enthusiastic, absolutely. Somewhere in my 23-year-old mind, I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. Yeah, right? I came home, yes, I was still living at home, and told my dad. He was thrilled and astonished. All he ever wanted to be was a cartoonist, and he worked hard to make it happen. Don't you know, when he was 14, he approached a syndicate in DC, he grew up in DC, and said, "I want to sign up." And they're like, "That's not how it's done." He said that was a valuable lesson, and he admitted his idea wasn't all that great. He was 14. And here I was, being asked to create a cartoon. He suggested I go down to the studio he built and work on some ideas. I had none. I was like, I don't know. Oh my God. Finally, a little voice in my head said, "Go for what you know. That's it. I'm going to have a cast of friends, Black women, speaking their minds, no environments, no bodies, just heads." I was a huge Jules Pfeiffer fan. I loved how he would, on occasion, have a character speak directly to the reader. I thought that was genius, so I kind of borrowed that from him. I showed a few cartoons that I created, and the editor said she loved them. Do more. We'll think about how to pace them out over the year. So I was back on my dad's drawing table, and ideas were flying. When I had a few more ready, I called and made an appointment to show off my latest, and I was told, "I guess you haven't heard. The magazine folded." I was like, what? Oh. I had never thought I wanted to be a cartoonist. Now it felt like a calling. I was devastated. I didn't have room for this next part in my mini memoir. That's why it's mini. There's so many stories I have. But I didn't have room in this next part. But what happened next was significant. I decided to take those very cartoons that I created for Elan to Essence magazine. It made sense to me. They were the only other Black woman magazine that I was aware of. I had created it for a Black women's magazine, but it turned out Essence was not interested in putting cartoons in their pages. However, they were curious about me, and one editor asked, "What do you do since you're not making it as a cartoonist?" I said I was a fashion reporter for a trade publication. don't you know, their fashion and beauty writer was about to go on maternity leave, and they needed a replacement. I said, I know nothing about beauty, but I'll take the editorial test. And I got that gig. When the previous writer decided not to come back, I held that position as fashion and beauty writer at Essence for the next 5.5 years. I didn't let them forget what I wanted to do. I would draw on the proofs that we'd pass around. It's like, you know, but, you know. And they did actually hire me to do some spot drawings and a couple of little illustrations while I was there. Okay, back to the MoMA cartoon. In 1989, my dad received the letter from the aforementioned Marty Claus from the Detroit Free Press. She asked him if he knew of any black cartoonists he could recommend. Indeed, he did. He said to me, are you going to talk about being a cartoonist, or are you going to be one? Well, I accepted the challenge. And then he asked me, are you presentation ready? And I was like, yes. And he was like, do you know what presentation ready means? And I was like, no. But it turns out I actually was. I just dusted off the strips I had done for Elan 6 years earlier, and I sent those very same 12 strips I'd done for the magazine to Detroit. And as it says here, the rest is history. But there's so much more. That one newspaper in Detroit, I quit my job at Essence. My mom, I was going to be a professional cartoonist. My mom thought I was crazy. She said, you need health insurance. I knew I needed more than one paper. But one paper paid $75 a week, and that wasn't going to cut it. I was no longer living home at this time. I was living, and rent is real. I was living in Brooklyn, and I wasn't going to make it. It was big. Rent was high even back then. I did know a thing or two about cartooning business, thank you, Dad. I knew that I needed a syndicate. I set out to reach all the top syndicates. I figured I'd be a sure bet since I was published already in a major newspaper, and I had already started receiving fan letters. I was convinced the syndicates were going to love me. Ha. So I did what they do. I pulled together a press kit of my work, included samples, fan letters, and the press I'd begun to receive, being the female Jackie Robinson of cartooning will get you noticed. So I also put in a cover letter that kind of put the syndicates on blast. That's the inside of I forgot to hit the button. But they kind of put the syndicates on blast. I said, few black cartoonists have entered national syndication since the 1970s. None of them have been women. And I was rejected time and time again. I was even rejected by my dad's syndicate. But okay, by now it was 1990, and Luther ended in 86, so it's 4 years. How people forget. But I did receive the best rejection letter from Jay Kennedy at King Features, rest his soul. He was so kind and gentle with his rejection. He was actually encouraging. He took the time to explain why he thought my strip would not work as is, and suggested changes that I might want to consider. He pointed to the unusual size, the exclusive use of talking heads, the missing environments, just to name a few things he thought weren't going to work. But he really liked my writing, and it was not the boilerplate rejection letters I'd received by most others. Jay's response was more than 2 pages. So rest easy, Jay. I really appreciate it. That was nice. But it was Lee Salem who showed bona fide interest. I was ecstatic. He offered me a development deal. Could I supply a weekly cartoon feature for Universal Press for a full year? And I was like, well, yes, I can. So I was already had contracted with Detroit Free Press, so I would pencil in a strip, send it to Universal Press, and send the inked-in version to Detroit. Easy peasy. I was like, I can do that. While waiting for the syndication thing to pan out, I got ambitious. Me? Yes. Once I hit the 1-year mark at the Free Press, I pulled together a collection of my work in book form. By that I mean I had the copy plays. This was pre-Kinko's. I had them put together. What I did was of the whole year, and I had an acetate front, I had a plastic back. I did it in duplicate and then had them cut it down the middle. Yeah, I was thinking. And it was really successful. I threw book parties, like Tupperware parties, and I sold books for $10. It cost me less than half of that to make them. And I sold 100. Once I sold 100, I used that money to make more. I sold out 6 editions. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? Several months after the development deal ended, Universal decided to give Where I'm Coming From a try. Working out the deal was fun. That's when having a sister as a lawyer comes in handy. Even though I understood newbie cartoonists don't get book deals right away, I thought I should. I sold 600 books on my own. Well, within the first few years of syndication, Andrews and McNeil published 2 books. And one had the foreword by Ruby Dianasi Davis. I'm name dropping. But I was very proud of that. And their company, Oz, made a set of greeting cards. I got my first 2 papers in rather short order. So I quit my job. This time I had been working as a fashion features editor at Women's Wear Daily. I was just 5 weeks into the job. Truth be told, I only really just wanted to be able to say I worked at Women's Wear Daily. And I had already accomplished that. And I was like, I'm gonna go. Very shallow, I know, but I liked it. I had been told from the beginning that, my vision of just using heads, no bodies, no environments, would be a hard sell. And it was. I did start to incorporate hands and to amplify expressions and use props. That notwithstanding, it was definitely not a good idea to have a different character every time I did a strip. As you know, I conceived it for a feature for a magazine. That's 12 characters a year. That's nothing. But the newspapers, that's something different. Even at my once-a-week pace, 52 characters in 1 year, that wasn't going to work. So I managed to whittle my 999,000 characters down to 9. It's still a lot, I know. But I needed my 9 Black women to show that we are not a monolith. So here's the cast. So that's Cheryl. She's my wisecracking, sarcastic one. She gets on her friends' nerves, but they appreciate her honesty. There's Jackie, the most high-strung of the crew, anxious about everything. Her friends find her exasperating and lovable. Judy is a good listener. Friends like to come to her with their problems, especially Nicole. Nicole thinks she's hot stuff. Humility is not her thing. Common sense is her deficit. Lakeisha is both pro-black. Let me start that again. Lakeisha is both pro-black and pro-women and knows that for some folks, she's seen as anti-white and anti-men. She's cool with that. Sonia is a stand-by-your-man kind of woman, although she can stand up for herself as well. Lydia is the only mom in the bunch, and she's a single mom at that, by choice. Her daughter, Riri, short for Aretha, commanding respect, having this baby brought her a newfound social awareness. Monica is physically fair-skinned, green eyes. She's sometimes mistaken for white. She's one of the blackest characters I have. Alicia, her friends think of her as Pollyanna. She has an unshakable faith in divine destiny. So I'll share a few strips. I only featured women in my strip. Men sometimes were heard but not seen. Here's Cheryl on the phone with her boyfriend, Maurice. Oh, maybe I can see it. I actually have a magnifying thing. It has come to this. Thank you. Look at that. So you're disappointed in your sister. You're disappointed in your sister because she got married? No, Maurice, it's because she changed her name It's like we're not even related anymore. So Cheryl, if we got married, and I do mean if, you won't take my name? Your name? I have a name, thank you very much. The woman is supposed to take the man's name. Listen, I don't need a man's name to validate me. So what will you do? I'll keep my father's name. When I didn't have them speaking on the phone or directly to the reader, I had them talking to each other, giving the reader a chance to eavesdrop. Here's Jackie and wisecracking Cheryl again. Do you ever think about how beautiful black women are? I mean, think about Angela Bassett, Vivica Fox, Halle Berry, Nia Long. Cheryl says, don't forget the Lena Hornes and the Diane Carrolls. She's like, you're right. I want to look as good as Diane Carroll when I'm her age. Fat chance she didn't look as good as Diane Carroll now. So rude. They still love her. And here's the ever optimistic Alicia trying to help her friend Judy. Once I had big dreams for my career. You should never give up on your dreams. I'm nearly 40. When's it going to happen? All in due time. What every successful person has said is the true triumph is in the journey. And who pays the bills while I'm tripping? and then this is just me having fun with Lydia's hair. It's a humidity piece. It's like no humidity, 20%, 40%, and 100%. She's like, I always knew I could have been a meteorologist. So where I'm coming from ended in 2005. Luckily, when the papers started to drop off, I had already started gigging again, this time as a freelance fact checker for mostly women's magazines. I still did my fashion thing on the side, working at backstage at runway shows and working as a designer sample sales, but that work was seasonal. When my syndication came to a complete end, I had a full-time job. I became a research editor at Parents magazine and ended up there for more than 18 years. That job was particularly timely. I'd gotten married and had a baby, and who was now a toddler, and I needed all the help I could get. Parents magazine was great. My friends would often encourage me to go back to cartooning, but family life and a full-time job keeps you busy. Plus, I had no venue. Put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, they'd say. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I resist it. One friend, Tara, suggested I use the strips I'd already done. She said she could magically, well, to me it was magical because computers make me nuts. She said we could delete the words and you could repurpose the drawings. Intriguing concept, but I was still not convinced. But in 2016, something unexpected happened, at least from my perspective. Someone got into the Oval Office that I couldn't contain myself. Here's my first post-syndication strip. I quite literally cut it out, cut and pasted it, and then penned in new words. America put white supremacy on the ballot. Guess what happened? Hashtag Obama backlash. After that, I was on a roll. I started drawing again, and I started posting on social media, and I still do. You can check me out. It's not a fancy, it's not a fancy handle, it's just my name. And it has a blue check. I did that after I got hacked a few times. There's no pay in it, but it gives me a chance to get things off my chest. So this is a later Lakeisha, and she says Major League Baseball is finally going to incorporate the stats from the Negro Leagues. Bye-bye, Babe Ruth. But don't worry, you can always say he holds the slugger record for the Caucasian League. And that's me, I started including myself. And I just say, rest easy, Josh Gibson. Is Lydia. Okay, countries, you can stop sending your rapists. We've got enough in the White House. It's like, check the cabinet. I cannot take it anymore. My head is going to explode. I simply can't take the news anymore. I need something else to watch. Oh, Forensic Files. Yeah, nothing calms my nerves like faster than a good true crime program. That's me saying, happier times. And here's Alicia. I get it. The plan is to ensure that the rich get richer, even if it takes cutting Medicaid, Medicare, and slashing Social Security. But even the richest among you cannot buy what I have and you're in so desperate need of, a soul. So I've been fortunate to get some attention from work on a larger scale. The Washington Post ran a strip I did following George Floyd, George Floyd murder verdict. I didn't have any words, but the hashtags read, finally, justice, keeping hope alive, the promise of America. And then The Nation ran one I did when a certain clown returned to the White House. Did I say clown? Yeah, I did. And this is Monica. I blame myself for my own despair. I've been duped. I allowed the false notion of a so-called post-racial America to seep into my psyche following the Obama wins. I completely ignored. I already knew what I already knew, and that is that until we collectively face the festering wound of racism in this nation, none of us will ever be free. That's me saying facts. And the Daily Cartoonist included one of my strips in a roundup of editorial cartoons where I spoke about Hegseth. This is Alicia. This is not Alicia, this is Cheryl, because she's got an attitude. Really? Now tattoos suffice as evidence as gang involvement, giving grounds for deportation? Mr. Secretary of Defense, please remove your shirt. There's a seat ready for you, Petey, on the next flight to El Salvador. I'm talking about how the number one threat of domestic terrorism is white nationalism. I stay busy. Me and my previously mentioned friend and curator, Tara Nakashima Donahue, have worked together on an exhibit of my work and my dad's. It was a dream of mine and Dad's to do a book of our work, since we covered many of the same topics over all those years and received many of the same reactions from readers. I'm talking about the not-so-fan letters in particular. Tara said, we can make an exhibit out of it. And still, racism in America was born. We juxtaposed my dad's work with mine and labeled each piece with the year it was created. Many of the same topics Dad covered in, say, 1967 were the same I spoke on in 1994. I won't read them, but I'll just flash through them a little bit. But we talked about police brutality, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, voting rights, redlining, voter rights, I said that, and the list goes on. It's disturbing to see how much things have remained the same. Let's see, folks, I'm going to say that folks who've seen it have reported that they are moved at how much the work still resonates today. Tara and I have been enjoying reimagining the exhibit for each new location. The first one was in, I forgot to show you that one. Oh yeah, the first one was in New York. And then the good people, where's Jenny? At the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library Museum, who are now the stewards of this exhibit, brought it to the Ohio State University. And so far it's traveled to University of California, Davis. Oops, that's too soon. I had a video, but we couldn't show it. Anyway, we're excited to see it go to other venues if the current administration will allow. People often ask me if my dad and I ever worked on a project together. Well, in August of 1968, 9-year-old me drew a portrait of my dad, just a floating head, and I called it My Daddy. He put in the body. Look at this hair on his legs. actually decades after we were published in the same newspaper for a time. As I mentioned, Dad was a regular columnist, at the an editorial cartoonist for Florida Today, and they picked up where I'm coming from. An astute reader wrote in and asked if we were related. Florida Today followed with a feature on us. This is a picture from that photo shoot. It's really staged. Like, and we were both included in the Pelican Publishing's Best Editorial Cartoons of the Year for 8 years running, from 1996 to 2003. Dad told a story about how one of his neighbors in Cocoa Beach said to him, "I think your daughter's work is better than yours." Without skipping a beat, my dad replied, "She had a better teacher." Okay, that's enough from me. That's, that's kind of truncated, but that's me and Dad through the years. Yeah, look at his drink. He used to go into the city as an animator. We lived on Long Island, and here's his drink in his hand and me on his head. He didn't look happy. Me and Dad. Dad and me. Me and Dad. And there's the book. So that's my presentation. If you guys have, that's good enough? Yeah. Yes. Thanks. Yeah. I could? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's so sweet. Yeah.
So we have 10 more minutes with Barbara, and we have some time if there's audience Q&A. So we're gonna lift the lights a little bit, and we have a microphone. So if you wanna hang your hand, actually we've got one right in front of you there, if Mr. Jamar wouldn't mind handing. If you will, it's on already, unless you change that. And if you'll just, there you go, got it?
Hi, was the face in the title of your exhibit the drawing of your dad when you were 9?
You know what? My dad used that face a lot in a lot of his work, so I just made it into him. But I put a mole here because he had a mole, and put a goatee on it. But yeah, so we continue to use that face that he used again and again in his work, and to show this, the poster for Still and things like that. But yeah, that was me stealing something again. Yeah.
Next question. Or comment, feedback is great. Okay.
Make me work for it here. So I'm curious on what kind of comments or letters you got from the papers, both good and bad, about your strips.
Yeah, so when I first started in Detroit and I started getting letters, they were positive. A lot of people were writing into me, it's like, how do you know what my life is? How did you get it so well? They felt like I was telling their story, killing them softly with my cartoon. It's what I was, and that was a high compliment to me. So my dad got letters too. It was just being able to see yourself in the paper where you weren't able to see yourself in a newspaper at that time. The not so nice letters, Dad got one where the person ripped out the cartoon from their paper and said, "I don't like seeing these little in my paper," Like, all right. And I got one that said, "I think you should go back to Africa and take Jesse Jackson with you." I mean, so it was that kind of stuff that we kind of hear now. It's like that's been unleashed again. But yeah, so I had a file of fan letters and not so fan letters. But
is there another generation of cartoonists?
In my family?
Yeah.
Oh, not so far. My son, thank you. My son is a performer. My husband's a musician, right? And he actually teaches at Berkeley. Associate professor, and my son is also a performer, and we were talking about not YouTube, what do you call it? TikTok, yes. I was so proud to tell him. I was like, I have 2,000 followers on Instagram. He's like, that's great. I was like, how many followers do you have? 80,000. I was like, what? So, he's not a cartoonist, though. He's a creator, and he's very funny, but I haven't seen him do any cartoons.
I'm curious, especially with this new book coming out, and younger cartoonists getting a chance to see your work again, what has been some of the, encouragement and sort of, guidance you've given or you suggested to younger cartoonists who are trying to respond to what's happening now for the first time?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I get younger cartoonists asking me what they can do, and I'm like, I can't really tell you what to do because I'm not really good with even the computer. It's and that's where it is. That's where comics live now, and I don't know how to do it. But on the other side of that, they like knowing that I stuck to my guns, and people have come up to me later and said, you made me feel like I should stick to it. I said, I did, I don't have a mansion, but, I'm happier, I'm happy to tell my story and okay, this is what my dad always said, is that a cartoonist's job was to observe, interpret, and record. And so take that to heart. I pass that knowledge down to do that. And when you're coming from your own perspective, you've got a sure thing, I think. It's like you're an individual and just do it. Don't be worried about what else other people think you should do. And just do your thing.
This has been wonderful, and I really like that you've explained where you're coming from, because I wasn't sure I always got it, but I'm a fellow Syracuse graduate with Rob Armstrong. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, it being big.
Yeah.
It's huge. One comment, not a criticism, but you left out somebody that was one of my favorites, was Ted Shear, that did Quincy. I worked with him.
Hold up. Ted Shear did Quincy, and I did mention him. He was one of the trios, yeah.
Oh, I came in late.
As a matter of fact, it was the three of them, Dad, Maury Turner, and Ted Shearer. Mm-hmm. And both Ted Shearer and Maury Turner wrote letters to my dad congratulating him on me entering the field.
Oh, okay.
What? That's kind of cool, Yeah, so no, I would never.
Yeah, Ted was a great guy.
He was great.
I worked with him for quite a while on a Consumer Reports thing, Penny Power magazine for kids.
Yes.
And he did this thing called the Penny Power Kids, which was
about
the neighborhood and all the kids learning about money, and saving and all that stuff. It was great.
Important stuff, yeah. You graduated from Syracuse?
Yes, way before you.
Well, I didn't graduate, so I guess.
Oh, I forgot that part. I was trying not to bring that up.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Was there somebody else?
All right, and one more comment. Perfect. I just have a quick comment. I'm looking at the hairstyles in the bottom right on that image. I'm just looking at the top of that hair. How quick were you able to draw that? Because that's a really complicated, guys, just follow that with your eye. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It's kind of, thank you. It's kind of my Carville hairdo. Oh, man. Thank you guys for being here.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
I just have to say how much of an inspiration you are to me.
Oh.
I'll make myself cry. And just seeing all those images of, these trailblazers, and you're one of them, it's very inspirational to me and to what I'm doing with my career. So I just wanted to give you your flowers. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Look at your audience.
Yes, it's very nice. Thank you. No, just stand up. Oh my God. Thank you. That's so sweet. you. Thank you. And I got calmer as time went on.
Great, you did great. Awesome, thank you so much. What a brilliant conclusion to our day together. And thank you, Jamar, Nicholas, beautiful final words. So heartfelt. Thank you to Barbara, to our panelists on the graphic medicine, to our podcast guests, and to all of you for being here. That concludes today's programming. We are now going back to the library if you're with us for that, because it's time for happy hour.
Oh, hotel.
Yeah. Well, we're at the library. No, somebody should stop drinking. Start drinking. Back to the hotel. We'll see you all there. Third floor. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you.